All right, so welcome everybody to the Barnes Fund Round 13 information session. I'm going to go through quite a number of things today. Most of them are going to be familiar to you if you've applied for this grant before, but there may be some slight changes, and we'll just try to clarify how things are going. For now, let me start off with introductions. I'm Karen Weaver. I'm the Housing Trust Fund Manager for the Barnes Fund. And I'm going to have my staff, have our staff do introduce themselves first, and then we'll go around and get everybody else. So Rashida, you want to go next?
Housing Trust Fund Analyst with the Barnes Fund.
Great. James?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Dean, and I am the new compliance specialist for the Barnes Fund.
Great. And James, you are super quiet, so if you do have questions or answers later in the session, if you'll speak up just a little bit. All right. So let's go ahead and have other folks introduce themselves. What I'm most interested in is your name, the organization you're with, and whether you are a first-time applicant. Sharon, can you go ahead and kick us off? Okay, hang on. Got something going on with Sharon's account, and it is coming out as cartoon voice. So Sharon, you may want to dial back in. Mark, you want to go next?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool, great. Yeah, Mark Wright with Be a Hand Foundation. This is not our first rodeo. We've been around since inception, so we've applied many times and been awarded.
Great, thanks, Mark. Rusty?
I'm Rusty Lawrence, and I'm working with the residential resources, and this is not our first time either.
Okay, sounds great. Sharon, let's try you again, and hopefully it will give us your actual voice. Oh. No, Sharon, you are coming out as cartoon voice. So why don't you jump off and come back in and see if we can. Oh, I'll get you back up. Ooh. You guys did hear it the same way I did, right?
Yeah, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's I hate that when that happens. I've had that happen on conference calls before, and but it's yeah, Sharon, your voice is coming out as if you are on fast forward. All right, anybody that I missed? All right, we will go ahead and get started, and there may be other people that join us as we go through. So let me share my screen. Let's see. All right, let's talk about round 13. We are going to cover, basically, we're going to talk about the 4 project types. Of course, in the past, we've had 3 different project types for Barnes, and we'll talk about the new type that we've developed, and then we'll talk a little bit about all of these different features, you know, from funding all the way through the application to the timeline, and then any questions that folks might have. So we've already done introductions, so we won't stop for that. So the 4 types of projects that are part of this Barnes General Funding Round will be the ones that we've always done, which are homeownership development, owner-occupied rehab, excuse me, and rental new construction. What we have now is a new category for rental rehab. And the idea of that is that it's not the same as doing an owner-occupied rehab where you go into somebody's home and actually, you know, fix that up for them. This would be for existing or acquisition and rehab projects where the applicant or the nonprofit is going to own and operate the project. So it might be an agency that has, you know, maybe it's substance abuse recovery, and they are providing homes for folks that are graduating from their program, and they're going to rent them to rent those homes out. So that's kind of the mindset that we've got. So that is that's what that one is. I'm going to talk you guys through pretty much everything that we think would be useful to you, and then at the end, which will be at about 10:45, sorry, not 10:45, at about 1:45, we will open it up for questions. All right, so for round 13, we have, as you can see here, $23,445,000. that's available for funding. We did change in the last round, we changed the maximum grant amount to where now you can apply for up to 4 million. That is a change from previous grant rounds. We do have the small set aside, small organization set aside of 20% of the total funding, as we always do, because we are required to do that by council. But it is worth knowing that it's for organizations with budgets under 2 million. But if you apply for that set aside where there is less competition, it also limits you to a maximum grant of 750,000. So just so everybody knows that there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Developer fee, we are asking for folks to not request more than 20%. And if you request less, then you may end up getting scored higher. And then the affordability period, as always, is 30 years unless you are an organization that does owner-occupied rehab. And if that's the case, in just a minute, I'll go through our lien schedule. We're using the same lien schedule that we use for round 12 that is adjusted by the size of the grant that you're making. Okay. So let's see. General requirements. I'm not going to read this out to you. As Rashida said, feel free to type questions in the chat box and we'll answer them toward the end. And then we'll try to cover everybody all at once. So for general requirements, nothing new about the 501c3 being the applicant. If you want to partner with for-profit developers, you're certainly welcome to. Just need to make sure that the applicant themselves are is the 501c3, which also means that the application needs to be signed by the 501c3. For income guidelines, it is helpful to know that we have some clarification on income. First of all of our income will be based on the annual HUD area median income, and it will be adjusted by household size. And so if you're working with a family of one, then they are going to, or a household of one, then they're going to be held to the one person 80% or 60% AMI. For homeownership, again, no change, 80% or below. But it is important to know that we'll determine, or you'll document the income of the homeowner or of the individual that's being involved. You'll document that household income when they sign their program agreement with you. And the reason that's important is because we were seeing some folks who maybe, just Habitat as an example, somebody would they would get into a program agreement with Habitat. They would go through the program, they would do their sweat equity, they would be ready to go to closing, and then they would get this great raise, which, in theory, we would all be excited for, but then it was causing questions about eligibility. So we have determined that from this round forward, we'll be doing household income will be determined at the time that the applicant enters into a program agreement with that family or individual. For rental new construction, it will be 60% AMI or below, and that's, of course, is not a change. One thing that may be a change is that we are not going to be able to do income averaging, even though that is sometimes allowed by other funding sources. Household income for the Barnes units themselves needs to stay at 60% or below. Excuse me, rental rehab, little bit of a nuance here, again, 60% or below, but if the property is unoccupied when you are doing the rehab on it, then it would be 60% at whatever point they initially occupy the property. However, if you're working on a property maybe that already belongs to you and you already have somebody who's renting, we don't want to displace anybody due to income. And so in order to preserve housing security, our guidelines are that when an occupant, that nobody should be displaced due to their income, but when that unit becomes vacant, it needs to be rented out to a household at 60% or below. Now, I'll also tell you that the grant policy is, and the scoring matrix, and all of this information is all on the Barnes page. If you scroll down to how to apply, you'll see the section that says round 13. And so that grant policy does have this same language in it. And we'll talk a little bit more about it in just a few minutes. And then owner occupied rehab is still at 80% AMI or below. But again, it's determined at the time that the applicant enters in, or that the homeowner enters into the program agreement with you guys as applicants or as grantees. On let's see, let me skip ahead here. Okay, so general requirement on financial standing is again positive cash flow. What we're really looking for here is the ability to carry out this project. So if we have the questions here. Metro requires that if it's an organization over 500 with a budget over 500,000, we have to have an audit. If it's an organization that's below 500,000, then we would need external CPA prepared financials. And again, Metro Code requires both of those. What is new and what is needed is that we also want the organizations, and this is the nonprofit applicant, needs to submit their most recent board monthly or quarterly financial report. Does not have to be prepared by a CPA. It's just whatever you would normally present to your board of directors on a monthly or quarterly basis. That's what I'm looking to see. And just to give you a context, the reason we're looking for that is that if we look at your CPA prepared financials, they may be a year or 2 years old. What I'm looking for is, okay, so where are you now? How, what are you looking at now? And all we're looking for there is your income statement and your balance sheet. So that's what we're looking for. Contract length, many of you may know that Metro will not do a contract for more than 24 months, but it is, we did want to make sure that folks know that generally that first 12-month extension is usually granted if all you're needing is just an extension of the date. So we will be sending out notices to folks. If you are a grantee, we'll send out a notice to you before your grant expires, but definitely want to keep up with that on your own notes as well. We do need about 4 months before the council meeting where it needs to be approved. We need about 4 months before it expires so that we have time to get it through the Housing Trust Fund Commission and then to council so that we have enough time to get it taken care of before your contract expires. It takes a little bit more time to get through council these days than it used to. All right, let's talk about rental rehab. Again, not going to read this to you, but these are the eligible activities, acquisition or rehab. Again, these are the ones that are owned and operated by the occupant. I mentioned the part about the income requirements. This will be in the PowerPoint as well. For those who may have come in a little bit late, we are recording this presentation, and we will have the recording and the PDF of this slide deck will both be on the Barnes Round 13 webpage, and they'll be easy for you to see. All right. Owner-occupied rehab, nothing really different here in terms of the area median income or the rehab work having to have a 1-year warranty. All of those things, that's all pretty standard. But I did want to go over with you the lien that the recapture agreement that we want you to use. We are now using this kind of scalable lien. What was happening was that a lot of organizations were doing grants of right at 5,000, but they didn't want to go up over 5,000 because they didn't want that homeowner to have a lien. So we now have that number is at up to 10,000. 10,000, you've got 2 years, all the way up to 70,000 would be an 8-year lien. And what I will encourage you guys to do is once you if you are a grantee and once you begin working with your homeowners on what their particular lien would be, we're happy to work with you from the staff side. You could just have them sign an agreement that says, okay, you're receiving $50,000 worth of grant, and so therefore you'll have a 6-year lien rather than having to give them this schedule. It's been pointed out to me that this may be confusing for some of our older homeowners, and so if we need to help simplify that, we can. But just wanted you to know that what you guys are committing to in the application is that you will follow this lien structure. All right, so Regarding land, Metro is not providing any land for this round. But so we are asking for organizations to have their own land and have strong land control for that. As you can see here, deed in hand, 99-year ground lease, signed sales contract. Keep in mind that what we're looking for with all of our funding is we are looking to be able to get this money out the door and on the street with you guys being turned into housing as quickly as possible. So for that reason, we want to make sure that property is already zoned or is able to be zoned within the timeline. If the property's not been zoned for the use that you're going to use it for, then, or that you're proposing, then you have to include as part of your application a council member letter of support and the name of whoever you had a conversation with planning and zoning staff to verify that it will be able to be zoned for that use. Now, of course, that's provided that Metro Council approves it, but you definitely want to have that conversation with staff, and you'll share with the staff as to what you'll share the staff name and that conversation so that we have that information. It is if your property is not zoned for the usage that you're trying to do, and you don't include that council member letter of support or the staff verification conversation or name, then we will, this is one of the required things for the application. So we will not move you into funding consideration unless that is included. Now, if you're zoned for what you, for your usage, then that's great. Just show us that you're zoned for that. And of course, funds can't be accessed until after zoning is approved. That's not new. Okay, so for those of you who maybe did not go through the information sessions for round 12, we have a new way of looking at our applications. The very first thing that we do on every application is we are reviewing whether or not the application meets these 4 minimum standards. And as I've got in red here, if the criteria are not met, your application will not go in for further review. So some of them are pretty simple, fill out your application fully, make sure you've got all your attachments, if we ask you for the audit, then upload the audit, really fully comply with the requirements of what we're trying to look for. Financial standing, again, if you're required to put your audit in there, then do. If you're looking at CPA financials, then do. But just make sure that you're answering all the financial questions on the application. Organizational information, again, developer fee. If you've got lawsuits or outstanding safety or wage claims, then you can stop right there because we cannot approve you. And then due diligence, site control and zoning is a little bit vague in the question, but what we're trying to find out is, do you know and understand, or does somebody on your team understand all of the codes and permitting requirements before you get your application in? Do you have design documents that are far enough along to where this is a good grant to make to you because you're really on the verge of being able to make this project happen? If you're not at that point, if you don't have, if you've got concept design documents and you don't have, and they're not, all the way to architectural plans, you can still apply. But just understand that if somebody else is applying for that same funding and is further along in the process, they are going to score higher because they're closer to being able to use the money. So that's our ultimate goal, is to get this money out the door. Once we get through those first 4 questions, and again, if you don't satisfy those 4 questions, then your application will go into this has been declined based on the fact that, or this did not get submitted for review because it did not meet the minimum standards. But if you go through that process and you've made it that far, then you'll go into section 2, which will be evaluated and scored. This portion is being scored internally by Barnes staff and housing staff. We will ask you questions about the team experience, the roles of the partners. We'll ask you, as always, for key resumes of key staff. We want to understand how your project is, or how your structure of your leadership team is being organized. So if your for-profit developer is going to be doing your construction, but you're going to be doing your select your homeowner selection or your tenant selection or your marketing, that go ahead and tell us all that. There should be plenty of room in the application to upload a document if you need to explain more. But it's, we've tried to put generous text requirements in there in the application. So hopefully you'll have enough room to be able to explain your situation. Funding sources and uses is, again, what used to be, we used to call capital stack. We changed that a little bit. We've been asked, on the sources, is the Barnes request, if the Barnes request is 50% of the total cost or less, where does developer fee come in on that? And what we'd be looking at is, let's say you're going to ask for $1 million and your Barnes request, sorry, if your project is $2 million, you're going to ask for $1 million for your project, then your developer fee could be 20% of what you're asking. So it should be 20% of your request. Yeah, so that's so 20% of that request. I'm going to actually make myself a note that we will double check that and make positively sure that it's 20% of the request and not 20% of the total. But it does not need to come out of your Barnes request. On the uses side, we do want you to fill out a detailed budget. We do ask that you include any committed funding that you've received. And again, if you haven't gotten your funding committed, you won't be kicked out. You can still apply, but the further along you are in the process and the closer you are to being able to actually create your project, the more points you would get. On the developer fee, if you will also include details on the use of the developer fee, and also if you've got any consultants or anybody like that that's going to be included as part of your developer fee. And as I said, any questions that you guys have as we go through this process, we'll show you at the end, but we're asking that everybody submit any questions within by the 21st of February, 2 weeks from now. And so if you have a question, even if we talk about it at the end of this session, if you still have that question, then email it to Rashida and me, and then we will make sure that we get you an answer, and we will publish the answers to all of those questions on the Barnes Fund webpage for round 13 so that everybody can see them. But I am going to make a note about that whole question of the 20% of total project. Just writing that down right this second. Or request. Okay. Let's see. And then site control, zoning, and development timeline. Again, with the ARPA funding that we've had in round 12, that development timeline was critically important so that we could meet the ARPA deadline. In this case, the development timeline for round 13 is important because it lets us see how you're planning to complete your project. It'd be great if you can include milestones in your development timeline, and then that allows us to just kind of see how you're mapping that out. The next section is on the project type, and again, this is the first the 4 different types of projects that we're talking about. Here is where we begin with external reviewers. And so we really do want to have as much detail as you can give us about how you are undertaking this project, how many buildings are you doing, how many, all of these questions will give you places to answer things like where are you, how are you choosing your applicants, and how are you going to market to folks. So as we talk about the marketing and outreach plan or the affirmative marketing plan, we're really looking for, tell us how you are reaching out into the community to increase the number of people who know about your program. One thing that I will say for those organizations that maybe have traditionally always served one type of applicant or another, perhaps you always work with new Americans or immigrant families, go ahead and show us how you are reaching out to other communities beyond that. And working with other nonprofits or trying to get the word out, because we really do want to have as many Nashvillians as possible to have access to affordable housing. So we'd like to get information on what you're doing to reach the potential population for your project. We're also looking here, the last item is the Community Needs Assessment Survey data analysis. excuse me, we're not asking you to go and get a Vanderbilt researcher to look at all your data. We're really just saying, hey, if you've looked at a community needs assessment and it determined that we have a strong need for senior housing, and so therefore we're going to focus our work on senior housing, that's what we're looking for, is just help connect the dots for us. All right, participant engagement, again, fancy way to say homeownership counseling or tenant counseling, or counseling with your homeowners that are getting rehabs done. Just make sure that they understand the affordability window. Help them know how to be successful in your program. So even with your tenants, if you've got a tenant education program, that's great. We'd love to know that you're working with them on, here's when you submit a maintenance request, and here's, you need to pay your rent on time, and, the education you can do for folks so that they can stay stably housed for as long as possible. Project design, again, we are looking for accessibility. We are looking for criteria on the universal design checklist, which will be one of the items that will be included in your application. When you go into SurveyMonkey Apply, there's a list of attachments on the left-hand side of the screen, and one of those will be the universal design checklist. And if you are doing new construction or you're rehabbing a large facility, then we'd like to see 10 items, 10 criteria being met for that at least. And then even if you're a smaller organization and excuse me, and you are doing homeowner rehab, but you're making sure that anytime you do a rehab, you've got, your floors are all at one level for accessibility, or your, any doors that you replace are all going to be at wide enough that wheelchairs can get through. Those kinds of things. Those are all super helpful for us to understand and for you to get points for. We do want you to submit the checklist with the application, and the same thing too for sustainability, resilience, energy efficiency. Again, just think about that these are reviewers who may or may not know your program. So just the more you can tell us about what you're doing so that we can get a clear picture and also give you points for anything that we can, that's what we're looking for. On transit, again, if you've got a property that's walkable or that's got, it's close to a transit stop, or if it's not close to a transit stop, you've arranged for a shuttle. Maybe WeGo is giving you free bus passes. Whatever those are, if you can just share that with us, we want to give you credit for as much as we can. Let's see. Okay, and then we go into the bonus points. Excuse me. So bonus points, you do not have to fill out these questions. Obviously, we want to give you credit for anything that we can. But I do want to make one clarification on the first bonus question, which is diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, or DEAI. You need to submit your DEAI checklist. It's an attachment that's included in those documents that are over on the left side of the SurveyMonkey Apply screen. You have to submit that DEAI checklist even if you're not going after the DEAI bonus. And the reason for that is we are asked questions about who are we granting money to? And so we have to report in our annual report every year how many of the agencies that we are making grants to are led by women or are led by people of color, whatever that might be. And so we do want you to submit that DEAI checklist, but then the bonus is so that we can give you credit for any of the DEAI practices that you follow. So maybe beyond just having folks on your board that are representative of Nashville's population, maybe you also are, doing some special work with making sure that you're doing sensitivity training amongst your tenants, or you're, trying to make sure that you're doing accessibility efforts to make sure that all of your projects have a voice from people with disabilities, or whatever that might be. Just again, these bonus points are for us to give you points for whatever you're doing that we would like to reinforce. Same thing with deeply affordable housing. If you're serving, if you're looking at your housing is going to be for 80%, but you've got a certain number set aside for 60% or below, tell us that, and we will, that would go under the deeply affordable housing bonus. Same thing if you're doing a rental project and but you're also serving 30% or below, then that can give you some extra points. And then of course, promotion of healthy communities is detailed out here. If you've looked at research that says, hey, social determinants of health says that in order to have a healthy community, we've got these three, then we need these three pieces of a community, and we're doing those three, then just make that connection for us so we can give you points. All right, last thing on the bonuses is the urban zoning overlay. The policy and the application tell you how to find whether or not your property is on that UZO list. Walkability, again, if you've got the ability for folks to walk in your community or to get around easily in your community, or you're doing sidewalks or whatever, let us know that. And then disaster recovery, with Nashville having just suffered another disaster, and which so frequently seems to happen, go ahead and tell us if any of your projects are going to be in disaster zones, and tell us which ones, and that way we can give you some extra points for that as well. All right, so the scoring matrix for each type, all of those scoring matrices, and each you know, if you're doing home ownership, construction, if you're doing home ownership, development, if you're doing new construction for rental, or any of the 4 different categories, each one has its own scoring matrix. So our goal is that you would go in and you know, get that scoring matrix, and our hope is that this will give you additional insights into what we are wanting applicants to address. So hopefully between the application, the grant policy on the website, the scoring matrix, our goal is that you should have a good sense of how to build your project, or share about your project in a way that's going to be competitive for these funds. I know some of you already know this, but we've got, usually we get about twice as many funds requested as what we can actually fund. So that's, we want you to be competitive. One thing I will say is if you have any confusion going through the application process, like let's say you get into SurveyMonkey and it won't let you fill out something that you need to, or it's or something's a required document, and you thought it was optional, reach out to Rashida and me, please, and email us and let us know so that we can make those corrections if needed. And we can make those corrections on the fly. We do not have to like take the whole site down and then put it back up again. So we'll make those changes and make sure that things can keep going as smoothly as possible. All right, timeline. Excuse me, guys. The applications opened on January 31st. As you can see here, questions to be emailed to Rashida and me by the 21st. Applications are due on the 18th of March at 11:59 p.m. The review period, first we'll do internal review and then we'll do external review, and that external review will complete on April 24th. And then the Housing Trust Fund Commission will actually vote on the grants that are recommended to them. They'll vote on that on the 28th of May. And then we'll present it to council. Unfortunately, like I said, it is taking a little longer these days to get things to council. So we're probably looking at late July, early August for council to approve. And then anybody that did not get funded is certainly welcome to reach out to us and schedule an appointment in September to talk to us about, you know, what happened, or why I didn't get as many points, and what could I do to be more competitive in the future. Okay, that was just a wild rush toward the finish there. So talk to me about questions that people have.
Let me ask a quick one, Karen.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Rusty.
Yep.
In terms of the application and working through the application, on the first couple of pages, there's some things that need to be uploaded that we might not have ready quite yet. And so you're not able to move forward on the application without uploading that.
Gotcha.
So I'm wondering, can you upload like a placeholder and then remove it later?
You can. Just be sure you go back and remove it and replace it, because we have in the past received things that people have uploaded their draft copy, and of course, you know, if it's just that, if that's all you've done, then we'll come back and say, hey, what happened to that? We need your final, but you can put in a placeholder. The system doesn't know, SurveyMonkey Apply doesn't know the content of what you're uploading.
Good deal. Okay.
Yep. Good question. Other questions?
I've got some more if nobody else has any.
We always have one, Rusty. There's always somebody in the group that has lots of questions and everybody else just sits back and lets you do the work. So go ahead. You can ask several.
So on that first page of the early pages, I did get to a question that said, what is the bonding capability of your team?
Yep.
And would you clarify that a bit for us?
Yes, I am. I actually went and looked that up so that I can answer that question. The bonding capacity is the amount of let me read you guys what the internet says, and then if somebody else wants to jump in and help define this, it's what Google says is that the bonding capacity is the maximum amount of surety credit that an insuring company will provide to a builder per project. So basically, they're going to make sure that based on the evaluation of that builder's financial stability, performance record, the total number of projects they can have going at any one time, and also be covered by this company is a particular dollar amount.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. I sort of know what I knew it had to do with the builder. If let's see, the follow up to that would be, oh, I just lost it. Sorry. I'll let that go for the time being.
Yep. I'm guessing, Rusty, that your question would have been like, what happens if you're not actually bonded?
Well, that was the question.
Okay.
I don't think we're required to be bonded, are we?
I don't
Requirement?
think so. We just need to know what the capacity is. So I don't know. James or Rashida, do you guys know whether we require the company to be bonded?
It depends on the size of the project. It's my understanding that some Metro may require, as the developer, its entity itself to be bonded, not necessarily the not-for-profit.
Yeah, it would be tough for the not-for-profit to be bonded.
Yeah, and it would not be something that we are requiring. It would be a question of whether your licensing as general contractor would require that.
Yeah, and possibly your financing other than the front.
Yep.
Okay, another question on the developer fee. It still is not quite clear to me. Okay, say you have you're asking for $1 million.
Yep.
And does that mean that in order to max out the points on the developer fee, the maximum that you can ask for, no, the maximum you can have in your project is 10% of that, of the amount that we are asking from the Barnes Fund, although the Barnes Fund really is only going to be paying for half of that because the other half is going to come from the other financing.
Right.
So all right, so it's a $2 million project. You're asking for $1 million from Barnes, you got $1 million from the bank.
Yep.
So $2 million project. So is it 10% of the 2 million or is it 10% of the 1 million?
And that's what I thought I knew the answer to right up until you asked that question a couple days ago by email, and I realized I don't. So Rashida or James, do you guys know what? I know, James, you just came on with Barnes and not asking you to necessarily report back on that. We can go and find this out, but I didn't know, Rashida, if you knew off the top of your head. And Rashida, you're on mute if you were trying to talk.
I am on mute and I was talking. Thank you. Okay, so I need him to repeat that question. I was responding to the previous question in the chat, and I hadn't posted that yet, but on the previous question, I was going to chime in and just say, no, Barnes does not require a nonprofit to be bonded as part of the eligibility, obviously, right? Okay. But we use it as a gauging factor to determine the strength of a project in the scoring matrix. So that's why that question is asked, right? But what was the question, Rusty?
This one was really on whether let's say the 20% development fee or the 10% maximum if you want to get the most points, is that 20% developer fee of the total project cost or of the Barnes request?
Of the Barnes request.
Of the Barnes request. Okay.
Yeah, 20%. No more than that percentage of the grant amount that they're at, the funding amount that they're asking for from Barnes is okay. Yeah, it's 20% of the money they're asking from Barnes.
Okay,
but 10% if you want to get the maximum number of.
10, yeah, if you want to get the maximum number of points.
So in the situation I was just saying, so if it's a $2 million project, $1 million comes from Barnes, $1 million comes from the bank, then the most you could ask for and get the maximum points would be $100,000 for the developer fee.
Yes.
Clear.
All right.
All right. Other questions that people might have? And I can't necessarily see everybody's hand up or anything. So if you've got one, just yell it out. And if you
All right,
do,
Karen, I got one
Rusty
more.
has another one. Go ahead, Rusty.
Sounds like nobody else has one, so I got one more.
Okay.
So when you use low-income housing tax credits, when you are calculating the income of the family, if you are, let's say you have a one-bedroom and it's a two-person household, generally what they allow you to do is you take the maximum income of one person, maximum income of two people, and you combine the two and divide by two. Does that make sense? And
It does make sense.
With Barnes.
Now, is that what HUD allows you to do, or is that what HMDA allows you to do?
That is what federal home loan, the tax credits.
Okay.
Yeah, LIHTC allows you to do that.
Okay. Well, what I know, because we've had this question a lot lately, what we are looking at is the HUD guidelines, and those are broken down by one person is, unless I'm wrong about this, and James and Rashida, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we're looking at, if it's a one-person household, they're looking at a one-person 80% maximum. James, are you aware if Home or MDHA or anybody else allows us to do the 1 + 2 divided by 2?
It was allowed in years past. I think they may have changed that to reflect with HUD. But I would have to circle back to verify that. I know it used to be allowed, Rusty. And I know with Barnes, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're sticking to HUD income.
We are, our policy is based on HUD.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
May run
Karen,
into some troubles with that, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead, Rashida.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we may have to just go check and get back with them on that because it might vary according to project type.
Okay.
Right. That's absolutely right.
Okay, thanks.
We'll find out. Ben asked a good question about the recording and slides for this presentation. We will put these up on the web page, and let me show you where I'm talking about. So let me hang on just 2 seconds. Let me share. Hang on, y'all give me a second. All right, when you go to the Barnes page, the regular Barnes page for if you go in Barnes page, nashville.gov, whatever it is, however you get there, I usually just have it earmarked, but basically it's nashville.gov, and then you enter in Barnes page, Barnes Fund. Let me share my screen real fast. Okay. Wait a minute. That's the wrong one. Let's try this again. Sorry, guys. Not quite enough caffeine this morning. All right, there we go. So you're on the Barnes, you're on the Housing Trust Fund page, the Barnes page. You're going to scroll down to how to apply. And once you click on round 13, then it will be right in this section, Ben. So it'll say, here's the information session, and the dates will go away. And what will instead be shown is, here are the PDFs for this presentation, and here's the YouTube video for this presentation. Just to show you how that is going to look when you get there. Don't be confused. We're not doing ARPA. But this is how we did it last time, is right underneath the overview was where we put the question and answer. Once the 2 weeks was over for the questions and answers, we put the answers up there. And then we had the information session for each grant type was here, so that you always had the presentation and you had the video. Now, I'll also point out for those of you who are at our 10-year or perhaps were not able to be at our 10-year, we do have our lovely 10-year celebration video is also now on the Barnes page. So you can go there and give yourself a little happy moment for the day. What other questions do people have?
Okay, I got another one.
You're the star student, Rusty. Go ahead.
This actually has to do with round 12. So round 12, at your last commission meeting, there hadn't been time to analyze how many applications you had and what that dollar figure was and all that. But you did say that some of the money that, if that were not used, you were going to go into around 14. I wonder if have you already determined that or anywhere close?
Yeah, we're in the process of that right now. There will be monies left over from round 12 that are ARPA funds that will be released in a round 14 or 15 ARPA round. We expect those to be this calendar year. I don't know exactly what month it'll be. Can't even really estimate at this point, but we are trying to get anything that's ARPA, we're trying to get out the door just as fast as we can. And but so I know Angie's got to go back and she'll have to request reallocation of those funds for a different use.
Yeah, and doesn't that all have to be used by December 31st, 2025?
2026.
So you actually do have 2.5 years, well, 2 3/4 years.
Yeah, and actually what we discovered, and anybody that's not doing ARPA, just turn your ears off for a second because this does get a little confusing, but you have to make your last draw request. You have to expend your funds by 12/31/26. If your if your project is gonna finish within the 3 months after your after that 12/31, then you can do that last draw request, even if your project is not 100% finished, if it's almost done.
Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. If you guys have asked any questions, Rusty, then if you will be sure that you send those to us. And Rusty, if you don't mind, I know you asked some the other day, but if you wouldn't mind resubmitting them so that they're within the question period, send them to Rashida and me. For those of you who have, we've got, I don't guess I've got on our webpage how to get to Rashida and me. But it's Rashida, you want to drop those into the chat?
Sure.
Our email addresses? Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So we send those questions to Rashida and me, and then we will answer questions as they come in, but we will post all of the answers to the questions after the 14 days so that everybody can see them. And if you are sending to me, please make sure that you spell my name with an I, Karen Weaver, Karin .Weaver, and then for Rashida, make sure you've got the H on the end of her name.
And hopefully I put those in there right.
They look right to me.
Okay. Yeah, I have sun shining in my eyes.
I got it. Actually, sun shining is a lovely problem for all of us to have today. Anybody have any last questions? Otherwise, I'm going to give you a whole 12 minutes back of your day. All right. If you have questions later, just send them to us. As I said, if you're running into problems with SurveyMonkey, that is not limited to the 2 weeks after this call. So, or the 2 weeks after the round opens. So if you've got a problem and you can't get something uploaded, just reach out to Rashida and me. Just make sure you copy her because she's really the SurveyMonkey apply expert. And we'll get that fixed for you and then share what the solution is. All right, guys, thank you very much for being on today, and best of luck to everybody, and we hope to see lots and lots of applications. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. It was good.
Okay, bye.